Hey, it's Carl Kennedy from The Rods, and you're watching Aftershocks TV.
All right, so to talk about now we got some other stuff coming up here in terms of some news or just some things we
Mm.
want to highlight. One of the things I want to bring up here is there's a tour that's coming up, and this is something I don't know if you were into this band. Obviously, and I didn't just bring these guys up too because they're from Ireland.
Mm.
I am a big fan of this, especially this record, and the band itself, Therapy. The band from the 90s, punk metal band out of the 90s. They got their
Yeah.
30th anniversary tour for Troublegum. And this is one of those records during that year, 94, I listened to a lot. And and recently I actually started listening to it a lot again recently, probably over the last 4 months or so. It kind of popped up and I was like, you know what? I haven't given that record a spin in a while. And
Mm.
I love it. I think it's a great record. Like I said, I got about 4 albums. I think about 4 or 5 CDs from Therapy. I was a fan. I think with them, like I said, I was a big fan in the early '90s. They were those bands that just always changed their sound.
Mm.
They started off with the Nurse album, which was more. I remember I used to have a Therapy shirt, a teeth grinder shirt, just big freaking mouth teeth. It was a pretty one of those like you would only wear when you're like 18 years old, type of thing. Yeah, you couldn't walk around with it now. It's just a little too over the top. But they were. I thought Troublegum was their best album, hands down. I mean, they have some good moments on their other records, but I think this album, start to finish, was their best. I know the song "Screamager." That was like their big hit off of this
Yeah.
album, and I think it was actually probably not even close to being one of the best songs on the record. It was a little poppy, it was more punky. But I remember first discovering this band too. Like I used to belong to this thing called Rock Video Monthly. I'm sure there's some other people out there that might be listening that had the same thing. It was like a thing you just every month they would send you a VHS tape, and it would be like probably about good 10, I think about 10 videos on there. And I remember Screamager was one of them. That's sort of how I kind of discovered them. And
Mm.
they did get a decent amount of press and play here in the States during that time. They were on. They had a song on the Judgment Night soundtrack too. I remember. So they were on A&M Records. So it was a big label here. So they did okay with this record. And then I remember when Infernal Love came out, their follow up. I wasn't really into that one. It was way different. They were just one of those bands that like to just change it up on every record. And I think if they would have done, some more material like Troublegum, they could have continued to do pretty well here in the States, but they changed it up and then it just kind of went downhill, at least here in the
Mm.
States, from my point. But this is great to see this tour. I wish they were coming here to the States. I know they're playing one date I saw at some festival in Austin, Texas. I'm hoping while they're over here, they could do a handful of tours. I would even travel to go to LA or something to see this. So I'm hoping, crossing my fingers, but for everyone in Europe, you guys are really lucky you get to get this full album in one show. That's pretty cool. Were you a fan of these guys at all? I know
Yeah,
Belfast.
kind of mediocre. I was never an Uber fan, but I do remember, I started buying Kerrang magazine. Let me think, probably back in '83 up to about the mid '90s when Kerrang just went all indie and alternative and shit, and I just dropped off. But so they were the darlings of Kerrang for a number of years, particularly around this
Okay.
period, '94-ish. And they were a big band at the time because they were playing big venues. I remember, I'm trying to remember if I saw them. I see them at Donington. I'm something is telling me I did. But and they were popular because Troublegum actually sold. I looked this up recently. Sold 1 million copies worldwide. I
It
mean,
did. Wow. Okay.
that's
Yeah.
I know now according to
Wow.
Wikipedia, so go figure. But there are 1
Mhm.
million copies worldwide. And if you look at their current tour, like they're touring, I have it here: Australia, Europe, a lot of Scandinavia, I think Asia, US states. I didn't even know they were playing that Austin, Texas. So and Andy Cairns, obviously, everybody knows the front man, the lead singer. He still
Mhm.
looks pretty much the same, but
He does. Yeah.
he really does. But if
He does.
anybody's looking at this thinking, "Oh, Therapy are back," well, let me put you in the picture a little bit. Therapy never went away. They have 16 albums out.
16 albums. I know. I saw that.
Their last album was 2023, a couple of months ago. So
Yeah.
they haven't dropped off the map. They're just coming
No.
back. Obviously, Troublegum was like their big their big release and whatnot. But
Mm.
obviously they're from Northern Ireland. I'm from Southern Ireland,
Mhm.
but same country. I hope I don't start a war. But they were one of those bands that were big on the festival scene. They won the Album of the Year, Band of the Year back in the mid-90s. So I'm very aware of who they are. I know this album quite well. Not a huge fan, not going to lie, but nice to see him back out again. Doing their thing, and back out doing this, not back out again. But did they ever make much noise over here during this period, 94? Obviously, people knew of them, but in terms of popularity and touring.
I mean, obviously, I'm sure they weren't as big as they were, obviously, over in the UK and so forth.
Yeah.
But they did make some noise here. They were on, like I said, Screamager there was, in New York City, there's a station called Q1043. I'm sure you might have heard it when you were.
Yep.
It's where Eddie Trunk was on for years. But before he was on there, I don't know if it was before. I don't know if he might have been on there when this happened. But
hey, Matt, just quickly, is that the same Eddie Trunk as a Second Home in Vegas? Would that be the same guy?
That'd be the same guy, right?
Second Home in Vegas. He never talks about the Second Home in Vegas. Just want to get that out there.
No, but he does have a Second Home in Vegas, doesn't he?
Oh, Second Home in Vegas. Gotcha. Same guy then. Yep.
Yeah, it's not Eddie Trunk.
I like Eddie. For the record, I think Eddie is awesome. He's and we're never going to have him on. I think he's one of the best interviewers out there. I really do.
Well, I will tell you this, but just quickly, I agree with you 100% on his interview. And I always said he was one of my, if you want to call it idols or influences when it comes to interviewing. Yes, he was. I always thought he was really good, and I would say I kind of not molded myself after him, but I used to listen to him and be like, this. If I'm going to interview, this is how you do it. I just can't stand him, his personality. I'll be straight up. I used to listen to his show on Sirius XM, and one day I just said that's it. I had enough. I can't stand him. I think he just got full of himself. It's like a lot of people. What are you gonna do?
No denying that. But here's how I look at that. I know this is typical Matt and I going off on a tangent, but here's the way I look at it is that I can overlook that because he does talk about himself and the I and me. I get it, right? But I'll overlook all that because first of all, he has literally the top guests in the rock world today. Everything from Coverdale to Priest to Maiden to whoever he wants, he can get him. So I'll overlook that for the content and the bullshit that he does. I'll just hum it out and then I'll listen to what he does. And he's a really good interviewer. He get everybody from, he's friends with everybody. He calls Tony Iommi Tone. I mean, that drives me crazy. Nobody calls him Tone. His name is Tony Iommi, but whatever.
I know, man.
But anyway, we're back to therapy with ego. We're back on a tangent.
So the radio station, Q1043, it was very interesting. They went through about a year. Because this came out like shortly after I graduated high school, this album, 94. I graduated in 93, it was 94. And I remember there was a station, Q1043, and it was the best station, commercial station I've ever, because it had played all the metal, meaning like underground metal and a lot of alternative. I know you weren't big in alternative metal, but like for me, nope. I was into a lot of alternative metal and grunge and stuff. And so it was bands like Prong and Biohazard. They had all those bands were on this station. Whatever it was, they played it. You know what I mean? If it was metal, not extreme metal, but anything that was just a little bit, not over the top, they would play it on there. And it was great. It was the best station ever. And I remember overnight, it just changed one day. Boom, and went to classic rock. And I was so distraught. For a year, we had a great station that was pumping out new music. And Therapy was one of the bands, like I said, Screamager was all over that. And so yeah, they did have a decent some moments here for a couple of years with this album. Like I said, they were on the Judgment Night soundtrack too. So they had a song with the rapper, I think it was Fatal or something. So they were on that as well. And so I think between those two, they started making some noise. And I remember it was just when they released the follow-up, Infernal Love, it was so different. It was more rock oriented. They had some like Beatles influences and stuff, and no one was buying that at the time. Everyone wanted to hear Troublegum Part 2, and that's just not what they do. I mean, if you go through, like I said, I remember I have two other albums I can think of at the top of my head. High Anxiety is one of them, which was more along the lines of this kind of record. It was more heavy. And then they had this other one, Shameless, after that I got, which was a little more punk oriented and kind of rock. And like I said, they just were all over the place. And I think that's in Europe, as we know, that fans love that. They're fine.
That can fly, yeah.
No problem. Here in the States, especially at that time. So when people, I think, heard that album, they checked out, and they would never made any noise here. And again, that's why you never really heard of, much from him here. But this album, it did do something.
Yeah,
back
it's
then.
glad to see him, back not back,
Yeah.
but glad to see this release being celebrated because like they were the darlings, particularly of Kerrang, but also of the rock and metal circuit, like from a touring band, festival band. They were always in the magazines, whether it was Metal Hammer, obviously Kerrang, like I said. But yeah, they're Northern Irish band, so I'm happy for them doing their thing.
Yeah, like you said, it's just amazing. 16 albums and
Yeah, unbelievable.
haven't stopped since. So exactly, I love seeing it. I love bands that just
Me
even
too.
through all the different trends, they just keep going. And then I hear it is boom. They should do really well on this tour. Obviously, I think a lot of
Good.
people overseas are
Good.
gonna see it. Absolutely. All right, so yeah, another thing I wanted to bring up. Okay, Violence. So Phil Demmel, guitarist Phil Demmel, has departed Violence, and that's kind of been out for about a couple weeks now. But what's new is that I guess he came out recently, said, as everyone knows now, Phil Demmel, obviously he used to play in Machine Head and he's the original guitarist for Violence. He is now also in Kerry King's band. And I guess he's been keeping that gig a secret for 4.5 years.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is like great. Wow, it's a long time to keep something under wraps like that. I'll give him credit for keeping his mouth shut. Not easy to do. I know, obviously, with him leaving Violence, he wanted to leave a while ago. I remember him saying that. I think once the reunion, they did a reunion here about 4 years ago. I remember we had Craig Cicero from Forbidden when me and Bob, we interviewed him right here in this room in my house here. That was when Violence was doing their reunion shows. They did 2 of them in Oakland here. It sold out. It was supposedly phenomenal. I didn't go to it. It was just sold out. I really had no way to get to it at the time. So, but I heard it was pretty phenomenal. And I think after that, they wanted to do music. I remember me and Chris Aiken did him for Aftershocks. We interviewed him for Aftershocks. And it was right after he left Machine Head. And I think Violence had just put out a video. They did a cover of a Dead Kennedy song, California Uber Alice. And it was the first, song they had put out in like 25, 30 years or whatever it was, about 25 years, I think it was. So I know after they did, I think the EP, he was kind of done with Violence. And so obviously Sean Killian still kept it going. And I guess he came back. He just, I think, finished up his last show with them down in South America. So
recently, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's out of there. But it's interesting how he kept this Kerry King thing, secret for 4.5 years. And so my thing is well, is that what really helped facilitate his departure from Machine Head? Because if he knew, did that make his decision easier knowing he had this in the vault, right? And then he knew he was going to basically be in now the second version of Slayer, if you want to call it. And of course, Kerry King and Slayer are going to get a ton of gigs. He's not going to have any problems selling, going on the road selling tickets. So did this really help facilitate his departure? Is my question? Because he's more of now Phil Demmel now he's more of one of those hired gun guys now, right? He's sort of, I think he's going to be that going forward. He just is going to do different projects or film for this guy here and be that guitarist. I don't know if he's going to ever really just do his own band again, unless he's going to kind of join up with like I said, someone like a Kerry King. He's going to be like kind of like Bostoff is, just that, hey, we need a guitar player. Boom, here comes Phil. I think he's going to be that guy. Just that's just my hunch. But I wonder if that's what gave him the I guess courage to go, you know what, fuck Machine Head. I don't need him now because I got this Kerry King thing coming down the road. I don't know. It's interesting.
It's a conspiracy theory, but it's a valid point. I mean, we don't know. We'll never know, I guess.
No, of course not. Yeah.
But
you have to ask him and get him on, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome. But I think with Violence is like their last EP was 22, I think. That EP, the 5 songs are just tremendous.
It's good, really good stuff. Yeah.
Tremendous. Let the World Burn, 5 just tremendous track. Listen to it today, actually, just walking the dogs and stuff. Great stuff. But Violence have only had 3 albums and 3 EPs, so it's not like this touring entity. So like, there's another question going: could you not have just stayed in Violence and just released an album with them or something every couple of years? Or is the Kerry King machine going to be so cranked up and so full on that there wasn't going to be time for that? And then Kerry King said, obviously we're conspiracy theory again, but Kerry King said, listen, you're not going to have time to do that because we're going to be doing this over here. I don't know. I'm a Machine Head thing. We don't know. But I just don't see where, Violence been just such a non-entity from a touring perspective. 3 albums, 3 EPs in, God damn it, 30 years. I mean, could he have done both? My argument is I think you could have. Violence then, I don't think they're big anywhere outside of the West Coast that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but it's interesting that it happened. It's happening, and I know when as the world burns, as the world burn, let the world burn EP was released a couple of years ago. There was an interview. I look back on it today, and he said they were planning another EP to come out fall 2024. Now that obviously never happened. So I wonder if those 4 or 5 tracks are just in the bag or in the can. They'll be released later or never. I don't know, but up to when this was been released, he was talking about the next EP. So, obviously he said he kept this on the wraps for 4.5 years. So there's a little bit of curiosity from me and obviously from you, Matt, about what's the bigger picture here. We'll never know. We're just guessing, shooting the shit on what could have, should have kind of thing. But, if he's going to do his thing with Kerry King, then, he's got a great legacy with Machine Head. He's got a great legacy. Those Violence releases are classic. And if Kerry King's his new thing, good luck to him. So, as I keep on saying, if he's coming to my town, whatever band he's in, I'm gonna give it a shot. Violence, I'm a big fan of. Kerry King, one track, I like it. Machine Head never ever rocked my world. Never, just did nothing for me.
Yeah, I was early days. I liked Machine Head, but not the first couple albums I liked a lot. Burn My Eyes, I really liked the first record, but I'm with you. I liked
never did
stuff.
It for me.
After they had that new metal period, I liked one of their records, Through the Ashes of Empires, I think it was. But after that, there was some good songs in that. But after that, well, once again, they started putting out like really long songs. Like The Blackening was supposedly like their, that was like their, I guess biggest, record in terms of fans, or like I said, there was that mid to late 2000s where they were really, really like, when they came back and really went back to being what they were when they started out and bringing Demmel on board is when they really took off. Yeah, I mean, they were, like I said, they were big in the 90s and they did fine. They were on Ozfest and they did, but they really took off in the mid 2000s when all that, the new wave of American, heavy metal stuff was kicking in with Lamb of God and all those. Machine Head, since they were pretty much the veterans, they were like the top dogs. And I'm with you, though. Nothing really did it for me in that time.
Not for me. They were okay. I mean, they're a decent band. Rob Flynn was, he did what he did and whatever, and always had good musicians, and they had a good brand.
Sure,
but everybody has that band or two that you just don't gravitate. It could be them. It could be like, I was never like a Trivium fan, as an example.
No, not either, exactly.
Matt Heafy, what they do, and they're good at what it's okay. I don't hate it. They're just not. They're not a band that never. And I have a couple of. I think I bought the first Trivium, first one or two, and I bought a couple of the Machine Head stuff. But I would never. They're just a band I just don't go back to. But if you like them, then that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, and with this Violence thing, I think to me it's just going back to what you kind of said before. They haven't put out much music in their career.
Nope.
Like, I love those first 2 records. I love them. But obviously, like I said, Sean Killian had health problems, and that's the thing too. I think
that's right.
They were never gonna be a full-time band. Even when I remember when we were, when me and Chris interviewed them, and they had that video out. They were slow rolling this EP. I mean, they put out, and it was a cover. So the first song that everyone heard from them in decades was a cover song and a video. And I kind of understood it. It was during the pandemic, and it was just, they wanted to kind of just give a taste to the people. They'd be like, this is kind of like what we, a little bit of what we sound like. And I remember we talked to him about it, and he was like, that was kind of their thing. Yeah, they just wanted to make, his whole thing is, I want to make sure we did it right. Okay, well, they put together a solid, EP, but it's thrash metal, right? You're not doing something that's groundbreaking. And to slow roll another EP out, another 3-4 years later.
That's it.
Once again, it's like, okay, all they're doing is playing the old songs. I think it's more just a weekend band. It's one of those, like, we'll do a little 4-run, it's 4-date run in the Midwest here, do a 4-date run in Texas here, do obviously out here whenever they want to do it because it's close. That's it. Maybe go do a festival and so forth. They're one of those kind of bands. And I think...
I agree.
I think Phil is looking at it like maybe, I don't know if he is or not, but I'm sure some of it's an integrity thing where it's like, this isn't the same band, because it was just him and these two were the only guys that were still left.
Yeah,
from
that's
the
right.
original band. And so the other guys all left. So it's not really Violence anymore. And that's what he was basically saying. He just didn't consider it the band being the same anymore, and that's why he left. So,
Well, I think if they're done, if Violence are done, and their last EP, their last 5 tracks a couple of years ago, then hey, if they're going out on that, they're going out on a high because I think it's a solid release.
yeah, I don't think
I
they're
really
done.
do.
I think they're going to keep. I think Killian's
I
going to
hope
keep
they
going.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
I
they
hope.
should, and I think they do. Too. I
Yep.
hope they do too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So, Tom, what do you got for us this week?
I think it's impossible not to talk about the new AC/DC reunion tour that's just announced, I think 3 days ago, whatever it is. And there's lots of
Reunion.
controversy
Oh,
going
no,
on. And it's
reunion.
not reunion.
Yeah.
I say reunion.
Yeah.
Edit that out. Basically, they just announced a tour, right? So not
Mhm.
reunion, yeah. And actually, the tickets on their European dates went on sale today, and they're playing one gig in Dublin, Ireland, in a stadium called Croke Park. It holds 82,000 people. It's the third biggest
Wow.
stadium in Europe, and it sold out this morning in 2 hours.
Wow.
82,000 fucking
Holy
tickets
shit.
in 2 hours in Dublin. I
Wow,
mean,
that's crazy.
now think about that, right? This is not 82,000 tickets in the greater New York area where there's 20 million people. This is a country of
I
like
don't-
5
yeah.
million people. Think about that.
Mhm.
Sold out in 2 hours. Crazy. And I'm guessing the European dates are pretty much 2 nights in Wembley Arena, 80,000 seats per night. So these are, AC/DC are just U2 level, Metallica level when it comes to a touring entity, right? So we know it, but that's the brand of AC/DC. Let's get talking about the band of AC/DC, which is, of course, is Brian Johnson. Of course, it's, Angus Young, Cliff Williams. Oh, wait, Phil Rudd. Oh, no, wait, he's not there either. So there's 2 members. And you got George. Is it George Young on filling in for Malcolm? Name escapes me completely. It is, isn't it? It is. Is it that? Yeah.
So.
And then I had to look. Obviously, Matt Laug. How do you pronounce it? He's basically a session player. And then Chris Cheney on bass from Jane's Addiction. So, and I'm sure they're stellar musicians. They're their discography is pretty stellar. And I think Cliff Williams had actually said not too long ago that he said he has some physical issues. I don't want to get into it, even though he did play Power Trip, which is a once-off gig. So you've got to wonder, is Cliff Williams in a position where he's out, or is he going to jump up for a couple of gigs here and there? Again, we don't know. But how many people of the 82,000 tickets sold today in Dublin, as an example, even know Cliff Williams is playing or not playing?
They don't even know. They don't care.
They just see Brian Johnson and they see Angus Young and they go AC/DC. That's good enough for me.
I think they just see the logo AC/DC and they go,
They
oh,
do.
there it is. And that's it.
What was Bob's best documentary? Band versus brand.
Absolutely.
So this is a prime example of that. So, but here, so this kind of opens up the kind of worms a little bit on this. I mean, how many people would go or not go because it's only the two of them, or do people give a shit and go, well, it's the last tour, this is probably it, I'm never going to see him again, so I'm just going to go and have a night out and have a couple of beers? Now, whichever side of the fence you fall on, I'm not making an argument for either one, because your opinion is your opinion. But my opinion is I'm going to see it because I'm a huge mega AC/DC fan, pretty much never going to see him again. So I'd say, yes, I would prefer to have Phil Rudd there. I prefer to have Cliff Williams there. But if they're not going to be there, then I'll take kind of second best. But second best is still going to be an awesome concert. So depends on what there's no right or wrong. It's just whatever you want to think.
What are your preferences? Yeah, I would go see them, of course. Like you said, I mean, look, most bands, especially at that age, late 60s or whatever, I mean, you're not going to have four of the guys. You're lucky if you get in two. I mean, you're normally going to get one, and you're lucky if you get two. And now remember, like we said, Brian Johnson's not even an original member, right? So you've only got one original member left of AC/DC.
Either Cliff Williams.
Yeah, exactly. He's not original. So, but you're right. But if we want to talk about at least, okay, we can at least.
Where do you stop? Where do you stop?
Well, I guess you'll start. I mean, I guess most. It's interesting because you've got the two. You've got the Bon Scott and the Brian Johnson. So I would say if you started at Back in Black, right, that was where you start in 1980. So then you'll have, like I said, even if Cliff Williams was there, you'd have him. But yeah, listen. To me, like I said, I always think the important thing is the voice and the guitar, and you got them both. You got Brian Johnson, you got Angus. Okay, so you got, I think, bass and drums, especially AC/DC. It's not like it's bass and drums that are gonna, reinventing the wheel type of
No,
stuff.
it's not Symphony X here.
Exactly. There's not progressive stuff. This is just bare
No.
bones straight rock. So anyway, anyone can play the Cliff Williams stuff and the Phil Rudd stuff. I don't think that's, I think as long as you got Angus and Brian Johnson up there, like let's put it this way, I'd rather this lineup than the one with Axl Rose. That was my thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I never wanted to see that.
No, I would have never. I would have never gone to. I think they only played 11 gigs. It was contractual. I get all that kind of stuff, or whatever. That's old news. But now, if AC/DC were on their tour and Brian Johnson wasn't there and Axl Rose was singing, and they only had Axl Rose and Angus, there's not a hope in hell I would go and see that. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't take a free ticket. I'd have no interest.
I wouldn't either. Yeah.
But yeah, and you see, I think what it is that a lot of fans, purists, kind of look for perfection, or where do you stop? That's the point. And I think to your point, Matt, when you get to these older bands, some members are dead, some people have left, some people have health issues, some people don't want to do it. So if you're looking for perfection or purity, you're not going to find it. So therefore, just don't go to a concert ever again. There's no point. If you're looking for it, it's not going to happen. Whereas I kind of say, like my ticket stub is going to say AC/DC when I go and see them if they come to my part of town, which I'm sure they will. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to see AC/DC in the summer or whenever they're going to announce their tour. And if somebody doesn't want to go because it says, well, it's only the guitar player, it's only Brian Johnson, whatever, that's okay too. But I think looking for perfection is just nonsense because it doesn't exist.
I agree. I agree. And like I said, look, it's just the way it is now. I mean, that's all it is. It's either that or nothing. And you take either Brian Johnson, Angus Young, and a couple of hired guns, or you don't take it at all. And I think most people are saying, yeah, we're taking it because look at the state of things right now anyway. And like you said, everyone knows this is going to be the last time they're going to see them.
Oh, 1,000%.
Legacy bed, that's going to be done.
They're done. They're done, yeah.
And so, so people are going to go see them. And like I said, I mean, they should. Like I said, sold out 2 hours. In
2 hours, 82,000 tickets. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I
would go see
crazy.
them. I would definitely go see them if they ever came around here.
Who would you prefer, Matt? Bon Scott, AC/DC, or Brian Johnson?
I'm a Brian Johnson guy. I think it's because of maybe my age, and that's what I started growing up with. Was Back in Black, in 1980. I was a young kid, and that's what was all over the place, and that was the first AC/DC I had heard. And so to me, I understand everyone. Most people are Bon Scott, all the way. Me, I'm a Brian Johnson. Yeah, I'm a Brian Johnson guy. So to me,
I would be
my thing. Yeah,
I would be a Bon Scott, but not by much. It's like 51-49% type thing. So it's like either or. But my analysis of that is that the Bon Scott era does not have any bad albums. So that for me wins it. The Brian Johnson,
makes sense.
You can start going Fly on the Wall and shit like that. That they're just quite frankly poor albums. So that would be the only kind of caveat, and who made who and all that kind of stuff is okay. And they came back with a Razor's Edge and they've been solid since. But that was my only caveat. But when I look back and Let There Be Rock and Power Age, but then you got to take in, for those about to rock, and Flick of the Switch. I'm a huge fan of Flick of the Switch. I don't know why that doesn't get love. I just think that album is so fucking raw. I think it's a fantastic AC/DC album, but there you go, off my soapbox.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I agree. Yeah, like I said, it's as I've gotten older. Yeah, I mean, the more I listen to AC/DC, I got really into. At first, I gotta lie, back in the day, I was like, I'm not a huge Bon Scott guy, but I was when I was a youngster, during the '80s and the hair metal stuff, and that was when, like I said, Brian Johnson to me was the guy. But yeah, when I listen back to those classic records, I mean, all of them, Power Age and everything. I mean, it's just Bon Scott was one of a kind.
I think what most bands, Matt, whether it's AC/DC or Maiden or whoever, is when you jumped on board, you have this emotional connection from the moment you jumped on board. Even though the rest of them are sometimes even better albums, depending on the band, not necessarily AC/DC, but the emotional connection keeps you drawn to a particular era, whether you like it or not. Like how many Sabbath fans jumped on in 1980 for Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, and then they rediscovered Ozzy, but their favorite part of Sabbath is those two albums, simply because that's when they jumped on board.
Eddie Trunk.
There's that too. Yeah, and there's Eddie.
He always talks about that.
He does.
Dio and that Sabbath with Dio was his,
But those two albums are up there for me, the best metal albums of all time.
I agree. It's different, but it's great. So it's I know. You said it's really. I think, like you said, it depends on when you discovered the band.
That's
You
right.
know, it depends when you like. I was
It's your
talking to
time. It was
everybody.
your time. That's the thing.
Yeah,
It was your
exactly.
time.
Like I was talking to the guy used to be on the CMS network, Tanner Poppet, a buddy of mine. So
Mm.
we were talking about Van Halen, and he said like, yeah, to him, to him Van Halen's Sammy Hagar. But he's like, because that's what I grew up with. He's a lot
Sure.
younger.
Same thing. Same
And it's
argument.
like, and that's like, yeah, I understand. Like to me, it's always gonna be David Lee Roth because that's what I grew up with. So I mean, like I said, it all depends on when you were introduced, like you said, to the band. A lot of it has to do, how old you were when you discovered them, and that's that connection. And sure, you can go back and listen to those classic records and love them,
Mm.
but there's nothing that's going to take the place of when you first connected with that band and who
That's
was
it.
in it at that time. Yeah, exactly.
But I think there's just on the final point on Sabbath, if they came from Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, which are easily their weakest albums, some good
weakest,
tracks
yeah.
in there easily.
Sure.
Johnny Blade, go figure. Oh my
I
God, it's
know,
awful.
yeah.
But those two, and then they got a revamp and they went straight into Martin Birch producing those two albums. So they're arguably better albums, but again, it depends on when you came in with the band. But then conversely, then I'm going to take those two albums and compare those to Sabotage or Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, and there's no comparison all over again. So it's just
Exactly,
it's a never ending conversation.
Yeah. But careful about Johnny Blade because that was the guy's name who gave a handle that gave us the question about Kings of Thrash. So we're not talking about you, Johnny Blade. We're talking
No. This is the song, Johnny Blade.
Yeah. I'm sure he's probably named that after that song. I'm sure too. Anyway, but
sure.